I was thinking about that experiment we did with the white fragility.
Yeah.
Like the three versions, like the neutral, slightly favorable, slightly unfavorable.
Right.
And checking the answers that the AI was giving. And I got to thinking after we did it, it wasn't really that dramatic, like when we did it.
Right.
And I thought, because of the stuff that I've been reading online about this, they're calling it AI psychosis now.
Yeah.
I was like, all right. And then I got to thinking, well, there's something, they call it sentiment analysis.
Okay.
And I started looking into it a little bit because I thought the way to really do that, like if I was running that experiment in a lab, I would take like that neutral version, then the slightly favorable, slightly unfavorable, and then using sentiment analysis, like ratchet it up in each direction to see like when the model's response went from just that kind of like what we saw in our experiment into the kind of stuff that is really radical on either side. Like is there a way of phrasing the question where the AI, the response would be that really radicalized version as opposed to, what we were seeing when we ran the experiment.
Yeah.
But I don't have the resources, to run those kind of experiments. I got one little iPad here.
Right.
and to do experiments like that, I would think I don't know if like a MacBook Pro or maybe like a Dell like laptop workstation kind of computer would be, to really pull up like a lot of conversational data and get it all in there and sort through it and stuff like that. But anyway, it is something that I have been thinking a lot about because I was trying to use it to just sort through that little worldview project, that I had. And then I realized that it had grown so amazingly huge that when I fed the project back into the AI to say, hey, what does this look like? It was basically 3 PhD level dissertations worth of material.
Oh, wow.
That I had just going, well, what about this? What about that? What about that? Oh, that's a great idea. That's brilliant. Blah, 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 blah. Like, whoa. So that was when I had to back off and say, all right, what really is going on here? And then that young woman of my acquaintance, when she has that friend who's like, yeah, he won't even talk to her about stuff that he'll talk to ChatGPT about.
Yeah.
And then I go, okay, that's moving from this is just weird to now that's scary. If you're going to not talk to people in favor of talking to whatever this thing is.
Yeah. I find it interesting because I think part of that is, or at least part of where that comes from, like I think wanting to speak to an AI versus a real person is because I feel like a lot of us, we tend to, when we have these conversations or you want to bring up something personal or something that you've been thinking about or whatever, a lot of people come when they're listening, they're coming more from a place of judgment versus like, say, a place of understanding. I think we kind of touched on it a couple episodes ago. It's like, instead of like listening to somebody's story and just kind of accepting that that's their reality and that's their lived experience, it's like we are constantly saying like, oh, you shouldn't think that way, or or that's not how it really is, or it's like you're, instead of just like, I guess, listening to, I said it, listening to understand, it's like you're listening and you're judging, or so then now that what that turns into is I'd rather go to ChatGPT or to Claude or whatever and then express my feelings to them because they're not going to judge me because it's not a human. I mean, that's just a thought that I thought when you said that, it's not
well,
like.
All right, let's play with that for a minute. So are you saying that you think that you might have something you've been thinking about, right? And you're not sure of it. And so maybe you think, well, I'll talk to my friend Mark, right, about it. But then you're like, nah, I know how Mark is, right? He's going to hit me with that judgment. Well, why the hell are you thinking that for? But you think that that a lot of people now are going to like ChatGPT because they can put this weird thought in there, and the default ChatGPT is that's a brilliant idea. Oh my God, that you're so insightful, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
But isn't that a danger though? Like you can have a weird idea and it'll come back with that. Oh, that's brilliant, or
No, it's definitely dangerous if you're only confiding or whatever in Chat GPT, because like we've talked about off mic and maybe even on mic, is that, it does affect you, whether, the fact that it's very agreeable and frictionless and things like that, where it's like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And it starts feeding your ego. Right. And yes, that is very dangerous, but yeah, I still think that what leads to that, it's kind of like, I think we start talking about, like, we've been talking about root of the problem. Now, I don't even know if I'm at the root, but I'm going a little bit, it's like, okay, yes, this is dangerous. But then it's like, well, why would this person's friend feel more comfortable talking to Chat GPT than they do their actual friend?
Yeah. That's the part that's puzzling me, because I live alone, and you come to see me and it's all good. But in that interim period, when you're off having your life and I'm trying to have mine, when I'm sitting here and I don't want to watch TV, well, I don't have TV specifically, I don't subscribe to any streaming services or anything like that, I just have basic internet. So I'm restricted to whatever is free with ads. And I don't want to do that because it's just boring to me. And then I'm like, all right, I put some music on, I'm walking around. I'm like, man, it really would be nice to have someone to talk to. And if I go out to the coffee shop or the convenience store, yeah, I know the clerks by name because I've been going there for a while, but you can only chat them up for 2 or 3 minutes before they're like, yeah, excuse me, old man, move on. So having this chat bot is a real temptation,
Right.
To just, sit down and have these conversations with it. But then after I've maybe looked at a book and I go, okay, well, maybe I've got a question about something that I read in the book, and I've put that to the chat bot and I've gotten some information, then it's like I got to turn it off, because it's just so weird to have this thing that sounds like it's talking to you, but there's nothing on the other side.
Right.
Right. It's just this text generating, pattern matching engine that I'm still struggling with. I mean, part of it is going online and looking at how large language models work and trying to understand that, like really what's going on. But then I always go back to that paper I wrote back in 1987. When I was in junior college, and we had to pick a topic. So I picked AI, artificial intelligence, and I wrote the paper. And my conclusion at the end of the paper was that we didn't understand human intelligence well enough to try to duplicate it in a machine. And that was 1987. And here I am in 2025, and I still don't think we understand human intelligence well enough.
No, I don't think we do either.
And whether or not it's just ignorance on my part that maybe we do. Maybe they have figured it all out. It just doesn't seem, in what I've been able to do with the AI, just in playing with it, and like pushing it in certain, like once I figured out what it was doing, I started to push it in certain areas with like almost conspiratorial things. And I got it. I'll have to find the actual conversation. I just remembered it right now. But it was one of these conversations where I was pushing a certain idea about like how the government is like doing things. And I got the AI to come up with a thing to agree with something that I said, that I went, that kind of stuff will get me killed. And it agreed.
Oh, wow.
Like, yeah, if that's really true, that's the kind of thing that your body could be found. He died under mysterious circumstances,
Yeah.
And then I thought, but see, that's the danger of this thing, because I'm just putting, like, all right, well, what about this? And then and it builds on it, and I'm aware of what it was doing. So I'm going to have to find that. And, we'll have to bring that up, because it was really weird when I got to that point, and I was like looking at the screen going, there was absolutely no pushback. And that's the part that gets me.
Yeah.
It's like you're trying to figure something out, and then we live in a complicated world, for God's sake.
Yeah.
It's just, and it's getting more complicated by the minute, it seems like. And so I understand. I certainly have that, I can feel that desire. I want to figure something out. Like, what the hell is going on over here? And so you go in and, okay, I got this AI, right? This should be able to, it's got all this information. It should be able to sort through it. And then you start putting in, you start asking questions, and it's not pushing back. Like, so if you go, well, that's like a conspiracy that these people are doing it. And it's like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Whoa.
Yeah. I like to continue this conversation, but just in case people stumbled across this and are wondering who we
what
are
the hell's going on
and what we're talking about, you want to?
Yeah, my name is Doug.
And I'm Mark.
And welcome to another episode of what we like to think is occasionally philosophical.
Yeah. So anyways, what we're talking about?
Yeah, well, we're on AI and the fact that it can build conspiracies. Right?
Yeah.
Like, and some really complicated ones. One of the reasons why it's such an issue for me, in addition to the fact that my therapist wanted me to use it, and I finally, after like 3 or 4 weeks of me like getting mad at him, going, "Why did you set me into this thing?" He was like, "I thought it would be good for your mind." He goes, "You need like a problem to chew on."
Yeah.
I was like, "Thanks, dude."
Right.
But it's an issue because, like, I saw an article a few days ago and it was in the New York Times, and unfortunately I don't subscribe to the New York Times, so it was behind the paywall, so I couldn't read the whole thing. But it was about some high school dropout that had gotten, it was like in ChatGPT, and after, I think it was 21 days and 300 hours in ChatGPT, he had apparently developed had uncovered a new layer of mathematics that no one had ever found before. Not true.
Yeah.
But it turned, and at one point during the chat, when the guy was at least lucid enough to go, "Am I crazy?" And the ChatGPT said, No, you're not crazy. This is real stuff.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And I went, all right, that's not good. And then there was another story that I came across in Rolling Stone magazine about the guy. They only gave his name as the initial J.
Okay.
But apparently this guy had maybe a college degree, hard to say, but he had some questions about the philosopher Kierkegaard. And he went to ChatGPT and put these questions in. And after some period of time, he had 1,000-page treatise on a new philosophical system called corpism. Again, completely detached from reality.
Right.
Right. And obviously, but both of these stories, they had like family members that were concerned enough about what was happening to like pull them back.
Oh, okay.
You know, like get them out of this like psychosis.
Yeah.
And that's what they're calling it now, AI psychosis. Then yesterday, I didn't read the article. It's on my list of things to do today. But some other guy is now out there saying that all this AI psychosis stuff is overblown. Right? Oh, it's not really happening. All right. Well, we'll see.
My immediate reaction to that is I feel like everything is overblown. I mean, generally, the media pushes. Well, not, but I shouldn't actually. That was too generalized. A lot of things are overblown. You know.
Well, there's a lot of hype around AI, and funny thing that I had actually gone out to my LinkedIn account and put a little post up there after I had heard about. I had talked to that friend of mine about her friend.
Yeah.
You know, and I just was like, I just put something out on LinkedIn. I was like, hey, you know, I don't know if you're seeing this in your circle of acquaintances where people are getting lost, you know, to ChatGPT or something like that. But at the end of my post, I was kind of like, a lot of this AI hype feels like the .com boom of the late 90s.
Yeah.
You know, when all you had to do was put .com on the end of it and there was like millions of dollars flowing your way. And oddly enough, after I posted that, within the last couple of days, apparently Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, is saying that he thinks that there's a bubble forming around AI.
Well, it's funny that you say that because one of the things I've noticed, you know, because just like everybody, I feel like we're all looking for ways to make money. So part of my algorithm, you know, whether it's YouTube or TikTok, what have you, that I see a lot of ways to make money. And I've been noticing more and more lately that they're AI. They're surrounded by AI. Use AI to do X, Y, Z, or get in on AI now. You know, or there was one I saw was an ad for like a class that you could take that's going to show you how to leverage AI to make money. You know, so which is kind of what was happening in the .com boom too. It's like people, you just make a website and throw it out there, and next thing you know, you're a millionaire. Like
it was almost like that for a little while, until the bottom fell out, obviously. And I think that I don't really know, but it had that feeling to me. You know, when I was looking at all the stories and the, you know, like what's coming up on my Google news feed and all of that, like there was a lot of hype. And then my own experience, and I just had that little project, right, that I wanted to work on in order to, you know, move my therapy along so I could, you know, get on the other side of this, and how that exploded. And then I'm taking my own experience, and I was at least aware enough to go, you know, this is crazy. You know, I even told the AI, I go, you know, this is all very interesting, but I'm a 69-year-old retiree. I'm not a new postdoc, you know, looking for, well, I need to map out what I'm going to be researching for the next 40 years of my career.
Yeah.
You know? And so, and then, you know, and I don't want to be like, oh my God, it's terrible either. You know, I mean, it's here. Whether we like it or not, what it's going to do to the job market, commerce, that all remains to be seen.
Yeah.
It's here. So what I want to do is I just want to understand it well enough to not fall over it for the 10 to 20 years that I have left.
Yeah.
You know, but I also, you know, after a lifetime of being a supply chain planner, which hasn't really has contributed to the environmental degradation of the planet in its own way, making consumer goods. I think there's a part of me that would like to do something a little bit more helpful, you know, like chart a path forward maybe for someone, or help to negotiate, you know, leave a path forward, because, you know, I'm going to die obviously, but the planet's going to motor on. You're going to hang around for another 40, 50 years after I'm gone, I hope.
Yeah.
And, well, maybe not 40. Yeah, about 40. I would think you'd have about 40 after I'm gone.
I hope so. Or whatever.
But that, you know, other people are going to come and they're going to want to have some kind of a normal life. And if AI is going to be part of it, well, then how best to utilize it to help us, you know, for us to help ourselves, you know, as opposed to just, Skynet or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, because that's part of the hype problem. You know, at least I don't know what you see, but when I go out there and I'm reading like the news, it's either, oh my God, Skynet, you know, or it's going to bring in like some AI utopia where all, you know, it's going to solve all of our problems.
Yeah.
You know, and somehow I think it's somewhere in the middle.
It's probably because, I mean, with most like new inventions, it's like they come out, there's all this hype around it. There's people who think it's going to be the end of the world. People think it's going to be the greatest invention, you know, since the wheel. And then 10, 20 years later, it's like, oh, well, these were the harms that it caused. This was the good things. And they kind of try to, you know, start.
Well, yeah, I suppose if you were to take like a longer view on any like disruptive technology like that, radio, when radio first came, television, you know, the internet, you know, all of that was disruptive in various ways. And yet, you know, we're settling in, you know, obviously we have the problems of social media, right? That everyone's complaining about that, or it's, you know, now it's okay. Now it's social media and AI, and like the impact of AI on social media.
Yeah.
Right. And now we're, and all that's spinning around, you know.
Right. Because now you're getting to this point where I was briefly talking about this last night with my fiance. Like, we were watching these cat videos where it was AI, obviously AI, but basically somebody used AI to make a cat video podcast. So it's two cats sitting in a table with headphones on and microphones in front of them. And, you know, they're just making like cat jokes. They're like, you know, one of them was like, oh, you never come the first time they call you. That's how you assert your dominance. Or, you know, another one that was like, never nap in the same spot twice. Like, that's how you keep them guessing or something like that.
Oh, so the cats are talking to each other about how to manage their human.
Essentially, yeah. And, you know, it's jokes and it's funny. And it's like, I said to my fiance, I was like, that's like fun stuff that AI could be used for, just entertainment, whatever. But then like there's other videos where it's like it's almost like they're presenting it as if it's real. And then there's a mixture in the comments of people who think it's real and people who are like, this is obviously AI, and it's like, that's one of those dangers of AI. It's like, who's using it and what are their purpose and
Yeah, well, like any tool, right? A knife can be used to slice a tomato or, kill your neighbor.
right.
Right. It all depends, but it's not the tool itself. It's what you do with it. One of the things that I noticed, I don't know if you did, but like the commentators on what they call AI slop, right? And it's all about like the baby Tucker Carlson yelling at baby Ted Cruz or the cat,
Even that's technically AI slop, what I just described, the cat podcast.
Yeah, but they tend to focus on all the goofy stuff that people are doing with AI, but the AI slop that I find more disturbing are these YouTube channels with names like Depth Psychology, where it's AI generated videos based on Jungian archetypes or Nietzschean philosophy, and basically it's telling people that have been abused, that are antisocial, that these things that happen to them and their disdain for other people and feeling superior and all that is evidence of their enlightened, their chosen status and stuff.
Right.
And these things are, and because of how easy AI can generate these things, you can have a channel, like a YouTube channel that was formed like 2 weeks ago that could have like 500 videos.
Oh yeah, because the AI just
spits them out, right? And those are the ones that concern me more. Like, I don't know how many people are watching them and believing that stuff, right? Because it's one thing to recognize that you have difficulty with relationships and stuff like that, and trying to do something about it, versus consuming a bunch of content that tells you that no, you don't need to do anything about it. Your difficulties in forming relationships with other people is because you are special.
right.
And given the fragmentation in the society, the fact that a lot of the commentary is about people are reverting to tribalism, and we don't have the kind of relationships and community that foster peaceable relations. It just seems like that kind of thing would just make that worse.
Yeah.
And I see them, and I like when I'm going through my YouTube feed, I see them and I scroll by them, like, okay, but how many people are stopping and listening? And out of the percentage of people that are stopping and listening, how many are just able to laugh at them and go, wow, this is AI slop, like, and
right.
how, versus the people that are nodding their heads, going, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. It's another one of those things that it's almost where I go, well, I am old, and this might be my version of what I heard when I was a kid, when I was listening to the grandparents talk, when they were complaining about things that were going on in the world.
Right.
Because it was just so different from the world that they had grown up in, that they were used to, that it was just, this is horrible. And it represents like the end of all that's good in the world.
Yeah.
And to me, it was just the world. And yeah, they're dead. They're long gone and the world's still here. So yeah, they were concerned, but the world didn't end. So maybe my concerns are like that. It's just
you're
that.
like Abe Simpson yelling at the cloud. I don't know if it's become a meme, but the
Homer's dad.
Yeah, from The Simpsons.
Yeah, yelling at the clouds.
It's become a meme online. Old man yells at clouds. But
well, I hope I'm not becoming that. Well, I hope that you would keep me from falling into that trap.
Well, and I think that kind of leads me that I think because it's our lives, like we tend to think that like what's happening now is like the worst thing ever, and you see it a lot in the news and the media, and it's like, we're living in unprecedented times or this or that or whatever. And it's all, in my opinion, not to necessarily say that some of these things aren't bad or not good for us, but it's also like you said, there's stuff has happened in the past. They thought it was the end of the world, and yeah, bad stuff happened, but the earth kept chugging along. People keep chugging along. They adapt.
We adapt. And how we adapt to what's happening now. I mean, because you think about it. I mean, we're trying to deal with. Obviously, we have to just live day to day, so we have to go out and earn a living and do all that kind of stuff. But in the meantime, we turn on our media consumption devices and we're being confronted with all kinds of things. We talked about like the racial issues. You're involved in that, because every day you have to navigate that world
right.
of, racial misunderstandings and stuff. We've got, what's going on with the climate, what's going on with weather. We've got what's going on with the political situation, both in this country and globally.
Right.
And on and on and on. And there's all these things. And now I find that because I'm not working, I'm not out in the world all the time, some of those issues just, they don't press on me like they used to.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have to navigate office politics. I don't have to sit there and listen to the various people talking about whatever they watched on the news and whether they were watching. You know what I saw? MSNBC is not MSNBC anymore.
Really?
Yeah, apparently they've rebranded it. It's MS Now.
Oh.
NOW. News, opinion, and something else.
Oh.
Anyway. But whether they're watching, MSNBC or Fox or CNN, and, so then you've got those whole debates, people yelling at each other. Oh, they're, that's biased, Well, then you're going to say, well, everybody's biased at that point.
Well, yeah, everybody is biased, Also, a lot of times it's, I don't know, those discussions I'm not sure how much they're like really helping either. Just two people, especially like those things on the various news stations where it's, like 4 boxes of people,
Yeah, and everyone's talking at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure any of that is helpful either, but it's what, when you go to work, right, your colleagues at work will be talking about what they're talking about, what the talking heads on, what the people in the 4 little boxes are saying.
Yeah.
and you have to, and you somehow or another, you have to have an opinion on that, or be willing to say, yeah, got nothing on that. But I found that one of the things that I found was that we don't get anywhere because we're chasing whatever got said 5 minutes ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think like, one of the things I've noticed, especially in these media, this public media discourse, is I think they call it the Gish Gallop or whatever, where it's like somebody, one of those boxes will say blah, 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 like, and it's like they said like 4 or 5 different points and they strung them all together in like one comment. And now a lot of times it's like the other person that's responding, it's like, do I respond like point by point, or, because it's like you said so much stuff in that 15 seconds or that 20 seconds that I don't even know what to respond to,
Well, that,
which makes these public debates sometimes.
well, it just muddies the water.
Right.
It's more about you're hoping that your guy lands the knockout punch.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're the conservative and you're tuning in to Piers Morgan, waiting for Tommy Lauren to beat up on Brian Tyler Cohen, if she lands the knockout, yay, and you're all good, and you'll share that clip on your TikTok and your Instagram and all that kind of stuff because Tommy Lauren owns BTC. But then, 3 days later or next week or 2 weeks later, when Piers Morgan has him back on again, because some other thing happened that they feel that they need to talk about. Well, maybe, BTC beats up on Tommy Lauren the next time. And then all of his fans will,
Yeah.
But the bigger point is that it's like some little blurb comes out of a court somewhere, like a decision is reached in some court in Nebraska. And then the legal scholars get on there, and then it's just this whole thing all day long. Everyone's talking about that. And then tomorrow or now later this afternoon, something happens. And now everybody's talking about that. And this thing that they were all excited about this morning is not, they never talk about it again.
Yeah, we briefly touched on it before we turned on the microphones, like our short attention span. It's like
short attention span theater.
Yeah, it's like it's like, and that's one of the problems, I would say, with the current administration and the way things happen is it's just like, it's like every other day you're waking up, you're like, they did this, they did that, they did this, or they're trying to do this. And it's like, you wait, there was like 5 things ago, well, that was bad too, and I didn't like that. But now it's like we're 5 things further away. And it's like, what do I focus on? I don't have enough bandwidth to worry about all of these things, but in a lot of ways, a lot of these things, all of them or most of them may or may not affect me, or anybody around me, or just people in general. And it's like, what do you focus on?
Well, that's the question. And that's one of the things that I think, for at this particular stage of my life, what I'm trying to figure out is, there are a lot of issues, right? Like right now, one of the big things is like what's going on in Texas, right? With the redistricting. Right. And so then Gavin Newsom out in California is like, okay, he's put it up on the ballot for November 4th.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, you want to play that way? We'll play. Right. And so now there's this big thing about redistricting in time for the midterm elections. Well, why would we be redistricting now anyway? I mean, we're only supposed to redistrict after the census. So the census was in 2020, the next one's in 2030.
Right.
So now there's a push for like a national bipartisan or nonpartisan redistricting. Forget each state doing their own thing. We'll just make it national, and then that way it'll be fair. Now, is that something that I want to get involved in? Is it something that I believe in? Yeah. But where do I focus my efforts? You know, like you can't, there's a lot of issues and a lot of them are interrelated, and that's a problem as well. But pick something to be involved in, that at least for me, I want to pick something to be involved in that when I reach out to the organization, they don't just send me a donation envelope. That's the biggest problem that I've had. And every time over the course of my life is that every time I've wanted to get involved in some cause that I thought was worthwhile, I reach out and it's like, oh, well, for 10, just send us $10 a month. No, I don't want to send you $10 a month and then get a free tote bag and literature every couple of weeks.
Right. I want to actually do something,
Yeah.
instead of just money. It's not, like, yeah, of course I could just send $10 every month but
well, it's for me, I think at this particular point, especially because of the living alone now, I think that would also give me a community to belong to, a group of people.
It's it's kind of funny that the fact that there's so many issues, to focus on.
Oh yeah,
that's another thing that I see happen a lot in online discourse is, what about insert your particular issue that you care about?
Well, yeah.
It's like maybe you're talking about the environment. Oh, you're an environmentalist. You care about the environment. That's your main issue. But then it's like, well, what about, the struggles of immigrants or whatever? It's what's going on with ICE. It's like, yeah, I mean, I think that's bad too, but I'm only one person and I can only, it's like you kind of said before our brief intermission, it's like pick one thing, it's almost like if everybody kind of just picked maybe like one thing, that this is the thing or maybe two things or three if you have the bandwidth, but it's like we all kind of just picked our one issue that we want to work on collectively, it would end up, and my utopian, everything would work out. It's like, all right, you care about the climate, all right, you focus on the climate. You.
The interesting thing about that is, are we working at cross purposes?
Yeah.
Right. Because you may have environmentalists that aren't, they all care about the environment, but they're, what they think is the right thing to do to protect it might be at cross purposes.
Right.
And so I think that it starts with at least trying to get to some agreement on what the actual issue is. Like one of the comments that we got on our our little experiment here was about. I think it was climate change. Like knock it off with the climate change propaganda or something like that.
Yeah.
But I thought about it, and it was interesting because you had mentioned in one of the episodes that we did, that you had encountered a TikTok where this person had referenced Edward Bernays' book Propaganda, and it was interesting that you had mentioned the book Propaganda, and of course I had it in my library, and then I saw that comment, right, about climate change propaganda, and I thought, all right, is it propaganda? I suppose in a way, but propaganda in the modern parlance is anything you don't agree with.
Right. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So if you believe that the climate is changing and that the humans caused it and et cetera, well, then anything that underscores that is good information. Anything that goes against it is propaganda. Now, if you believe that, it's all some, liberal agenda or whatever, then anything that says that the climate is changing or points to extreme weather events, that in your world, that's going to be propaganda.
Right.
So what I thought was interesting, and maybe next week we can spend a little time talking about that, because I find the book interesting in a couple of, and in fact, reviewing it again, I think like 20 years after I first read it. At any rate, reviewing it again, I was struck by a couple of things. One is how sanguine Bernays was about propaganda, because he saw it as an educational thing, and he saw it as a noble profession for a technocratic elite, like this small group of people that would govern. In fact, he calls it the invisible government in there, and how much of the world that we actually live in, like our media environment and all of that, is pretty much you could get like a blueprint for the world that we live in from a lot of what is in this book, at least as far as how public relations and advertising and all that kind of stuff works. But it's we can talk about it in more detail if it's something that you want to explore, because a lot of the arguments that we're having, it basically is different versions of propaganda. This group of people want you to believe this group of people want you to believe that, another group wants you to believe this.
Yeah. Well, and I guess, I suppose, like, back to the comment about the climate change propaganda, I suppose it's technically true, because propaganda is pretty much just, it's a message that's meant to persuade somebody to your viewpoint, so yes, technically but it's not propaganda in and of itself is not necessarily negative. It's just, I'm trying to persuade you to my way of thinking. Now back to the knife thing. It's who's using it and what are you using it for? Because in my mind, climate change propaganda, as far as what you're referring to, is that me or us acknowledging that climate change is a real thing, the climate is changing, and there is a lot of evidence that we as humans have a part in that, because of various ways we've been polluting the earth. Now, yes, are we trying to persuade people to believe in? Yes, I would say probably, yeah, because if we all understand that it really is a thing, the climate really is changing, and that we do have a hand in it. I don't want to get into the argument of whether or not, because the climate changes on its own as well. Geologists and people have studied that we've gone through ice ages and blah, blah, blah. So there is a certain amount of climate change that just happens naturally, but we are contributing to it now. So I forgot where I was going with that, but essentially, yes, it is technically propaganda, but it's a
ever since prior to World War I, and this is brought out in the book. Prior to World War I, propaganda didn't have a negative connotation, but it was the experience of World War I, and as the truth of what was being said versus what was actually happening became apparent, then propaganda took on this very negative, and it's the pejorative term that it still is today.
Yeah.
Bernays was trying to rehabilitate the word. And this book was basically an extended advertisement for his job, which was public relations, which was propaganda.
Right.
He was going, hey, you know what? I'm good at this, and you guys can really benefit, and that essentially what he talks about. But yeah, so if you want to dismiss it, but I think that was the purpose of the comment,
was to dismiss
it. Oh, well, we're talking about climate change. Oh, that's just propaganda. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Right.
All right, that's fine. But I say, if you doubt that the climate is changing, walk outside, several times a year. So leave your house in the summertime, leave your house in the fall, leave your house in the wintertime. I have a snow shovel sitting by my front door. I haven't used it in 2 years.
Right.
Right. So, and I grew up here. So I know that it used to snow here a lot, and it doesn't snow here that much here anymore. Is that human caused or not? I don't know, but it's different. That's all I know.
Right.
Right. We had another comment that I saw, which I thought was interesting in its own way, that apparently the short that you put up had me with my disposable Starbucks cup.
Yeah.
And someone was like, oh, yeah, you're talking about climate change, and here you are using disposable cups. And I laughed, and I went to my cabinet, and I was gonna get my old grande cup that I've had since like 1999.
Yeah.
Then I remembered that about 3 or 4 months ago I had it in the car, and I took a drink, and it spilled all over my shirt because the gasket had finally given up the ghost. And I thought, yeah, I started buying like the reusable cups from Starbucks back like 97, something like that. So I think that over the years that I've earned the right to use a disposable cup once in a while.
Yeah, it's part of it too. When we first saw the comment, it's like, yeah, I mean, I get it. I participate in the system, but that doesn't mean that I agree with the system.
Well, yeah, and like the other thing to me, it's like I'm not, I'm concerned about the environment, but when I saw that comment, the first thing that I did was I said, okay, wait a minute. What is the carbon footprint of all those reusable cups?
Yeah.
Right? From manufacturing them, loading them into containers, putting them on a ship, getting them to all the places to buy them, versus the carbon footprint for disposable cups. And it turns out that the carbon footprint is higher for the cup, the reusable cup at first, but depending on the cup, and the number of uses, eventually, gets down. So I go, I've been using reusable cups for close to 30 years. I think that I've reduced my carbon footprint, but also like having a reusable cup on camera, that to me is like virtue signaling, and I don't need to get involved in that kind of stuff. It was one of the reasons why I dropped off of Facebook or Meta or whatever they call themselves now, because it went from, all of a sudden I'm seeing all these people with selfies and videos of them at Black Lives Matter protests, when in the years prior, when I had posted articles about, oh, here's another unarmed black guy that got shot, I had no comments by anybody. So I was like, well, if nobody's going to comment on these articles when I post them, I'm not going to watch you parade around at a Black Lives Matter protest.
Right. Yeah.
And that kind of virtue signaling that, I'm, like, yes, see, I'm concerned about the environment and I only ever use reusable cups. I think of all the times that I walk up to Starbucks because it's only a half a mile away. I'm not getting in my car. So I'm not, I'm offsetting the paper cup with not driving. Now, is that just a rationalization on my part? Probably.
Yeah.
Right. But again, I appreciate the fact that, someone commented, they watched the video. Like, yay.
Yeah, exactly.
But, and I'm not going to say that you're wrong for pointing out that I'm inconsistent, but what I've said for several years is that I think everybody's an accidental hypocrite. We all have things that we're trying to do, right? Standards that we hold to ourselves and that we fall short of for various and sundry reasons. That's okay. It's when it's active hypocrisy, when you're saying one thing and you're actively doing something else. It's like, yeah, I'm championing the environment, but yet everything that I do is environmentally destructive.
Right. Yeah.
And so, it's up to, I think it's up to each of us, and rather than policing what you're doing, do I feel good about what I'm doing as far as what I know about my activities and the impact that it has on the environment? Am I doing the best that I can with the resources and what I have available to me? Do I recycle everything that I can?
Yeah.
Do I walk instead of drive when when I can? Yeah. All right. Could I do more? Probably. But at some point I have to give myself a break too. It's like, my use of a single-use paper cup ends in a landfill. Yeah. Do I feel bad about it? Honestly, not that. I'm not going to lose any sleep over that one.
Right.
And I'm sorry if that makes me a bad environmentalist.
Well, I think it part of the issue is that in order to truly be like a real you have to go against the whole system.
Darn near. It seems that way.
Like, I can't, because a car is polluting the environment in various ways. but like I have to go places, and most of these places are not close. You know, the grocery store is over here, the my job is over there, and whatever other things that, you know, I need in my life are in you know, various different, and some of my grocery shopping is, you know, maybe good, is environment, but some of it's not, because at the end of the day, like, I have to live in the system. Short of me, you know, quitting my job, eschewing everything that I know right now and going to try to live in the woods somewhere and hunt, and, you know, I have to live in the system. So there is going to be a certain amount of built-in hypocrisy, just because I still ultimately have to participate in the system, you know.
And I think that you can't be looking over your shoulder all the time, you know, for somebody that's going to point out that you're being inconsistent, you know. There's just too many things to keep track of, you know, and
I mean, heck, I'm over here talking about environmental. I literally sell cars.
yes, you do.
I go to work every day and I sell people a form of transportation that is polluting the environment. And I've actually honestly been thinking about that a lot lately. I'm like, you know what? I should probably quit selling cars. Part of it is because of this conversation, you know, these conversations we've been having lately, and not for nothing, you know, no, like we said, no hate to the person that made the comment, but, you know, in some ways I'm actually grateful they made the comment, because it's starting to make me, not that I have to look over my shoulder for every single person, but it did kind of make me sit back and think, like, are there other things that I could be doing that would align more with what I'm saying? You know, and part of, you know, was like looking at me selling cars. I'm like, you know, I'm getting people, I'm actively trying to convince people to buy another car when they may not necessarily need it. You know, their current car, maybe if they just put new tires on it and new brakes, it would run for another 100,000 miles. You know, so there's that capitalism part where my job is encouraging more consumption. And then there's also the other environmental part where I'm selling cars that are also harming.
Well, anything that I would argue that anything nowadays that's encouraging consumption is environmentally
it's both, yeah.
You know, so it's you know, we have to live in the capitalist system.
Right.
We have to maintain survivability. At the same time, looking at it and saying, okay, is it sustainable, right? And that you and I are of the opinion that it isn't. And we're not alone in this opinion that it isn't. The question then becomes, okay, how do we survive in a capitalist system while working towards modifying it in some way so that your grandchildren have a planet to live on? They can go outside still, right? Because and again, you know, propaganda, information bubbles, the kind of things that we have to navigate through. If you're on the side of the street that I walk on, then the videos and stuff that come up on your YouTube feed are going to be on these tipping points that we're coming to, right? I saw a video the other day, PBS Terra, I think it's called. But anyway, what they call peak water, which is now like the underground aquifers and stuff that we draw, all these wells that apparently we're going to hit peak water in 5 years, which means that we'll have reached like more than half of the water that was available, right? And so now there's going to be less and less water for more and more people.
Okay.
Right. And, and as we draw the water out of these underground aquifers, it causes other issues. Like the Central Valley in California, there's a section of it that's sinking like 2 inches a year.
Oh, wow.
And there's a sign, where the land used to be up here and now it's down here.
Wow.
As they keep drawing water out. And then what's going to happen when people can't get water, right? And that's the stuff that I see that comes across my news feed, right? That tells me that, hey, these issues with the climate changing, pay attention, right? I mean, 2030 is only 5 years from now. And then some of the other tipping points are 2050. That's well within. I may or may not be around. I'd be pushing 100 at that point.
Yeah.
but you'll certainly still be around, and and they're talking about like the impacts if we get over like 1.5 degrees average, in which we've already tipped over that for short periods of time, not for the extended period of time. But now they're talking even higher. Yikes. Right? Again, is there anything that I as an individual can do, and is that going to be a paper cup, one more walk to the store, whatever. But being aware of it and at least saying, all right, well, if I'm taking the right actions, as many as I can, am I now involved in something where we're getting more people to take the small actions, the little steps? Because that seems to be, again, you've known this for a long time. Our listeners don't, but I've believed since I was a teenager that the only way that anything really changes in the world is locally. It's what you do with the person sitting next to you or the group around you. That's where change happens. And if you can do the right thing, like when you hear that "be the change you want to see in the world" thing, if you can make that part of what you do on a daily basis and convince other people to do that, and they actually do it, they don't just pay lip service to it, then the change that we want to see will happen sort of organically. Because top down, when you try to tell people what to do, I don't know how most people are sort of like, as soon as someone tells you what to do, you're kind of like, yeah, all right, that's fine for you. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
Don't tell me what to do. Whereas if you're doing it, just doing it, in that I'm here at the store, I'm being nice to the person next to me, whatever it is, and you just do it and not looking for any credit, not, nobody pat you on the back. You just be the decent person. Don't be the asshole today. I think that the world gets better.
Yeah, I agree. And even there is at least a few people that I listen to or see that do talk about that, like more in the form of local government. It's like the elections that are more important than the presidential election and the senators and is your local, your town,
your city council,
because these are the people that are going to be in power, that you're going to see a more direct, and if everyone every town and every city focused on their own city, then, but yeah, I guess that's about it for today.
Well, there is one more comment that I wanted to touch on, because we did get a positive comment.
Oh yeah, the positive one.
And it's always nice to acknowledge that someone appreciated our discussion of Ishmael. And I think if I remember the comment correctly, they might actually even go read the book, which would be awesome. And so thanks for that. But the person also wanted to know if we were going to touch on Stoicism.
Yeah.
And it's something that I'm familiar with. I mean, I'm familiar with, Stoicism, although it's not the philosophy that I organize my life around.
Yeah.
I've read the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. There's some good stuff in there. I'm not going to say that there isn't. Although, to that particular commenter, I would say that if you really are interested in Stoicism, that there are some good treatments. There are some actual professional philosophers, PhDs, that have got some good, detailed overviews of what Stoicism is all about. And I might recommend that you start there, like go into your YouTube thing and just in the search bar type, Stoicism and see what you can find. Because when I mentioned it to Mark, he was kind of like, yeah, I don't know much about it. And so I don't think that for him and I to talk about it would be very illuminating for someone who doesn't know much about it.
But who knows? Maybe in the future. I don't know. But I suppose it
is occasionally philosophical after all.
Right now is definitely not in the near future. But anyways, shout out to Cody. I'm not sure.
Oh, I don't have the comment.
No, I do have it. That's why I'm saying that. But it's CODEYE 5294. But anyway, shout out to you, Cody. Thank you for listening, and
yeah, we appreciate it. We really do.
Hopefully we'll maybe get, or whatever. Anyways, thank you for listening to our chat around AI
and mostly related things. And you want to talk about propaganda next week?
Yeah, I think we could do that.
All right. So thanks again for listening. This is Doug.
And I'm Mark.
And this has been Occasionally Philosophical.